What do we think?
Is that?
Wow. The car, was that a DeLorean?
It was a DeLorean. Yeah, you gotta go retro 80s. I mean, just like our background.
Okay. I love it.
Welcome back, everyone. That was our brand new intro that nobody knew except for myself. So I was gonna throw that in there real quick as we are jumping into a VIBE Edu mailbag. First off, it's great to see you all on screen. I feel like it's been a while. I don't know why it feels that way, but it really comes down to I missed you. I missed your faces. I miss being with you, but I also miss the fact that our audience gets to send us different questions for the mailbag for us to answer. So if we're ready to go, we can launch into some. I think, Kim, this was sent to you directly, and this is more on leadership. So let's dive into this one. What should we do, or what should I do if I want leadership opportunities when there are no leadership options where I'm at?
And this, I mean, we kind of touched on this, like how you create your own, but I would love, especially like Josh and TJ, you guys to kind of chime in here. What does that really look like for a teacher to create their own?
Well, I just did it. I don't advise that for a lot of folks, but it's what I try to challenge folks a lot. Like I put this in my book too, is like there are so many problems on our campuses that are not being solved. And so when you see that, you can't go rogue. Obviously, you need to have support with your admin, you need to have support with the leadership team. But at the same point, I think a lot of folks are seeking opportunity instead of knocking on the door and saying, hey, I see this as a problem. I have a solution. Can I go with this? And I can't tell you how many times that I did that and I got a yes. Now, there was some logistics that they had to go through, and I had to kind of prove as to the data that I had, why I thought this was a problem. This was my solution. This is the budget I need. These are the people involved. This is, all those things, right? Because admin's not going to sign off on it unless you have all those ducks in a row. But once you start doing that, and you start getting those opportunities, you don't need a title. I mean, I was an art teacher, and like people scoffed at the fact that I was doing things outside of my classroom. At the same time, I wanted to show that I could lead an initiative, or I can lead a project. I could start something from the ground, and then I had something on the back end as far as data to support that this is working and this is a solution. And so, for anyone that's listening, if you're looking, you're like, you know what, there are no leadership titles, there are no positions available for me to move into. It doesn't mean that you can't influence and you can't lead. It's just a matter of finding what those problems are, and then finding a creative solution to then pitch to your leadership team or pitch to your admin to then move forward with that. And then eventually I had people, even without a leadership title, asking me for assistance or asking me to help out with something else. And I turned kind of that image for myself as how people looked at me. Instead of just the elective teacher in the corner, now it was someone that's a leader on this campus.
You had people actually scoff at you?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder why. That just seems so...
I made a lot of people uncomfortable, Mitch. I made a lot of people uncomfortable.
You make me uncomfortable sometimes. So I get that.
That's just your personal space bubble, buddy.
Yeah. I think that nobody has gone up against Mitch Weathers ever in his life. I feel like that was the same thing. Like people saying no or looking at me like you're the crazy one. But I think as you were talking, Josh, I had this, I mean, I was literally just talking to my teacher community, and a lot of them, because they just started reading my book. And even though I told them, I really told them, do whatever you want. We're going to be doing a book study later in the summertime, but they just like needed to start reading, which I love. And one of the first stories is just about how the work that I do just kind of got started. And it was that grassroots came from me. And one of my teachers in the community, she was like, Kim, it was like standing room only in your classroom when this started. Like people would come in and they were sitting on the floor and standing in the back. And then when it morphed into like workshops that were created from, district, again, they were in there like dying. And one of them, another teacher had said, I remember, I still have the little speaker that you gave to like all the teachers that came. I gave them speakers because that's what I loved, like using in the classroom was music and, you know, during transitions, playing music when they come in, music. And so they each got the speaker. She's like, I still have my speaker after years and years and years and years. I still have my speaker. And I was like, oh my gosh. But thinking about that, Josh, like, yes, I went to my principal and I said, Houston, we have a problem and I have a solution. I got the hard no, now is not the time. That's how it started. And as you were talking, I was like, okay, then what did I do after that? I wrote an email to district leaders and I said, I have a solution. Come into my classroom. And that's what I had said. I said, come in. Please come in and see this. You've got to see this with your own eyes. And I think that's kind of like where everything started. And then it just took off. I don't know. TJ, what were your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Josh. You can't just go rogue. Although I think making your own leadership position is a great option. I would say for going to the principal, the making it easy as possible to say yes. Like there's a problem, nobody has the capacity to deal with that problem, and you're going to fill a void. That is fantastic advice. I also would say expand the where. If you want leadership opportunities because you want to gain leadership skills, you want leadership opportunities because you want to put it on your resume, you want leadership opportunities because you want to build your own capacity or have a stepping stone towards something in the future, expand the where you want to lead. It doesn't just have to be in your school. It could be in the district. It could be in the state. It could be at your church. So those of us who want to be leaders and want to practice leadership and be in service of others, typically there's multiple avenues that we go down and multiple spaces where we're going to practice our skills and get those experiences. So if it's not immediately at the school or you're getting the hard no like Kim just discussed, just expand the where. There's a lot of places in education where you can be a leader and practice those leadership skills and even get a title. And I mean that too to anybody listening, to expand the where to, and we talked about it on the show, from the school to the district to the state to the region to the nation. We need leaders in education at every single level. And I will say this too, I know exactly where Josh got that idea for that new intro.
Yeah, what's that?
He was in his bathroom hanging something and he fell and hit his head on the toilet.
It's true. And then the flux capacitor came to mind.
That's exactly what happened.
Nice.
I'm curious because what I hear in Kim's story, that you were innovating, you know, aka leading change in your room, in your space, in your environment, and saw that, oh, we could use this elsewhere, right? Other kids could benefit, other teachers would benefit from this. And I had a similar experience designing organized binder where people just started showing up. And I was like, well, I'm doing this, you know, and it started spreading kind of grassroots that way. Which, you know, some of that was happening with you as well, Kim. But I wonder for Josh and TJ, like the reason I asked Josh, like people were like, what's this guy doing? Is it like is it because they were thinking, is he grandstanding? Because I've never, you know, had the experience with a assistant principal or principal where I would come and say, or a teacher would come and say like, hey, I want to, considering leadership, I'd like to take on a project or whatever it might be. And in other words, like, you're not going to just hand it all to me and not mentor me, but I'm going to take something off your plate because I want to contribute to the community at this different way or at this different level. It seems to me like everyone would be like, you're crazy, but go for it. You know what I mean? Like, I know for me as a teacher and then department chair for all the years, people, like, part of me, I took over the department because it was so poorly run. And I was like, had just come out of the nonprofit space as an executive director. And now I'm underneath this guy that clearly just no one else wanted the job and just wasn't it was just like he was in the interview with my principal and he just stared out the window the whole time. He didn't even ask me questions or anything. Love the guy. He's still a good friend of mine, but I just was like, we need some leadership in this department. And I kind of took it by force. Unfortunately, they did a vote and all this stuff. And he was a good sport about it. But after that, a lot of my years as I think it was 12 or 14 years I chaired the department, it was because everyone thought I was crazy. They're like, I don't want to build the master schedule for them. I don't want to, and I personally enjoyed that and hiring new people and, curating our little community. We did some really cool things. So I'm just curious, I'm throwing that out because you guys have both been principals. I think, wouldn't it be welcomed? So that person who's like, I don't have a direct leadership opportunity, maybe they're leaders just to, can you edit this, Josh?
I'm not going to edit it. I think you're making sense. I think you're, so for instance, Mitch, I was a third year teacher when I started to make the change. So I was going to year 4 when I started to make the change into to TJ's point, I had the conversation with another principal that said, you should go into leadership. You should be a principal someday. And then a month later, I got into my program. That was early on in my 4th year. So to my campus, I was just an elective teacher that was young, that was inexperienced, that they really didn't see. My first year, my mentor teacher told me, you don't want to be seen by your principal because then they're going to think you're weak. Take care of your crap in your classroom. If you need help, I'm next door and we'll figure it out. That was the mindset that I had early on in my teaching career. Is I never bothered, or I never went to the front office. I never went, if I had a problem, I never went to my administration because I wanted them to think that I was a great teacher that didn't need support. That was unfortunately the mindset that I had. So then year 4, when I'm going in and I'm just everywhere, it literally this is how me and Kim work, right? It's 0 to 100. It's just a speedboat all the time. So I was I'm going to do this and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get the opportunities to learn, to experience. So that way I can get in that position as quickly as possible. So for them, it was never see this guy who's a young teacher to now I see him all the time. And so to this person's question, I just started doing stuff. I didn't ask. To Kim's thing, for instance, if it was before school or after school for duty, right? Outdoor, indoor duty, I just showed up. Cafeteria time during my lunch, that wasn't my duty. I didn't have cafeteria duty. That was the admin's thing. I would show up and help. So I'd just show up and I'd just be like, hey, do you need help? And of course they're gonna be like, yeah. So I just showed up all the time. If there was we had a gas leak in the school and we had to evacuate the entire school.
That's one I would have not shown up for, probably. I would have evacuated.
I was in my off period. I asked the admin, hey, do you need assistance? I grabbed a walkie-talkie and I helped. Am I an administrator? No. But can I assist and lead on the campus? Yes. It's just about finding those opportunities. Is there a problem? Yes. Can I ask to be the solution? Most likely, I usually got a yes. But for everyone else, is who's this guy to have a walkie-talkie and walk around with the admin during an evacuation? I've never seen this guy before this year, So I think it just made people uncomfortable. That's all.
I would ignore that, though. I mean, if you want to be a leader, you've got to learn to ignore that anyway. That's actually good training, is when people treat you like that and you're able to get some thicker skin from it. Because guess what? The higher up you go in any organization, the more that's going to happen. To just underscore something that Josh is saying, rather than looking for an initiative to lead or a problem to solve, which is good advice too, and you've heard it here, but just start doing stuff. There are common spaces, as long as you're not late to your own classes or shirking your own responsibilities as a teacher, there's stuff you can do to help out. Being at bus duty, when I was a principal, I had a lot of walkers. I call them walkers. I think Mitch thought that was weird one time, but, and there were lots of kids hanging out on campus before and after school, and there wasn't a lot of supervision. So the teachers who are willing to like go out there and talk to kids and just be there as a presence, that's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
While everybody else is preparing for class or already in their classrooms or taking a break or whatever the case may be, or getting into their car, there were a handful of leaders. Those also were the people who became department chairs, and they were the first to get the initiatives and to take on the other challenges, because we could see that they were hungry for more than just their regular role, which, don't get me wrong, is super important, but there's always something to offer to the community on your planning period, before school, after school, in the times that you have maybe some downtime, and then use other time for planning. Typically, we're talking about strong teachers who are willing to do that, use their before, after school planning period lunch to contribute in some way, even if it's not every day, on a regular basis. People notice that, is what I'm saying. And you can start that today.
I was thinking, especially like my elementary school teachers who are listening, my goodness, outside, recess, snack time, lunch time, play time, anytime outside where you have your classified employees, they need your support. And if you have language and you have systems, you're going to model that language, model those systems. Even if it's just out there, I was like literally, as you were talking, painting a picture of like myself outside with a crew of kids who all just needed help opening up their bag of chips, right?
Yeah.
Or their drink or whatever it was. And like, I loved it. I just wanted to hang out with the children. So yes, being out there, you can model, again, language, systems, but you can also just have fun. And other teachers also notice that too. And then that starts to change the culture across your campus. Like, this is just what we do. This is just who we are. And so, I mean, I'd call you a bison teacher for sure.
One more thing. I love the idea of a book study. Like, again, it's not just about leadership, but also developing as a leader.
Let's book study.
Book study. Get a book, get a friend and a book. It's that simple.
Maybe becoming the bison?
Maybe.
The bison. Maybe a book about leadership. Maybe something about aspiring to lead. Could be about executive functioning. You know, any number of those things. Feedback, instructional leadership, school culture. We've got it all, folks.
We kind of do, but
We do.
and that's true, TJ. There's a magnetism about that. Even if it's just two people doing a book study, it will grow if you're consistent with that. And that is its own type of leadership. Just considering, a topic, whatever it might be. Let's say it's SEL and you're reading Becoming the Bison. You're changing school culture by exploring new ideas within that community, and that's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really important one.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be big. I think that's the misconception.
One book.
Yeah.
What's our other question before we run out of time?
I want TJ to go on a rant with this one, Josh.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
We'll tee it up for TJ here.
Huh?
All right. This question is, as a team leader, the leadership team is just regurgitating information. How do we create more leadership opportunities? And
So this is
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Josh, read that again.
okay. I'm not going to find it. As a teacher leader, the leadership team is just regurgitating information. How do we create more leadership opportunities?
So does that mean, if you have any context, like when you go to a staff meeting and you sit there for an hour and the leadership's just telling you stuff that could have been put in an email, and you're like, wow, this is such precious time, sacred time, we're all together, and you're disseminating information that I could have just, is that what you mean by that?
I think it's worse than that. I think it's they're going to a leadership team meeting.
Okay, is it the teacher leaders with leadership, and they're like, hey, we're going to tell you this, and then you're going to take it to your people and you're going to tell them?
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll let TJ rant. Because I've been the person that happens to, and luckily had relationships with my leadership to be like, what are we doing? This is like such a waste of time, and not that the information's not important. There's just different conduits for the
But it
delivery
happens
of
often.
Too often.
Oh, it's like the norm. Go ahead, TJ. Let her
Well, I
rip.
was gonna say it's normal. It's really normal. Like I work with a lot of schools where that is the case. And it could be worse where there's not even a leadership team that assembles. So if you're already sitting at a table once or twice a month with department chairs, grade level leaders, etc., people with titles, and maybe they have stipends, that is a step in the right direction. It's just then those people need to lead an initiative. So what's the meeting about? And Mitch just gave the advice. If you have the relationship with the leader, it's sitting down with them and saying, hey, I want to lead work. I don't want to just repeat what we're told at a leadership team meeting. That's number one. Number two, a lot of times what happens is that translates to you repeating the work of the principal, or repeating what the principal said. And you show up at the meeting with your notes and you say, so just met with Dr. Stamper and here's what he said. That's a no-no. I wouldn't do that. I would translate that into my own words, into my own messaging, so that I was leading the work rather than just repeating. So you can twist this a little bit and make it into a little bit more of a leadership scenario. Two technical pieces. One is I would use a third of the meeting time about leadership capacity. So if you could influence the agenda, putting the book study on the agenda or putting some leadership development activities on the agenda helps it feel more like we're learning to lead together versus just repeating information that we're told. And then the other thing is a suggestion on items on the agenda is marking those with some type of code, like this is for information, this is for discussion, this is for not for dissemination, this is for a decision. And so having codes like that on the agenda, so we know when we're just receiving information versus we need to be giving input for a decision that needs to be made. And I hope that the leaders of these meetings are listening to this so that you can change that structure to be more about leadership, leading initiatives, and getting stuff done versus just telling people things. There's my rant.
No, that was really good. I love the chunking of the time. I love how when I listen to you, TJ, and I'm sure the listeners also are gathering this too, you usually say like a third of a time, a third of a whatever, a third. Like I love that because it's very clear in my brain as I'm listening to you. And what I was thinking was how intentional it would be to chunk that out in your schedule, right? Whoever's job that is, maybe that's something that this teacher takes on, is creating that schedule or supporting the principal in creating that schedule or whatever their system is for that. But I was thinking, yeah, if it was color coded or it said right there, like the coding part, when you said that, I was like, oh, that's, yeah, like 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, or 20, 20, 20, or whatever it ends up looking like. This is when I'm just going to tell you stuff and you're going to listen because this is important stuff. This is a time where we're going to we're all in this together and we're discussing it. And this is the stuff that we're going to take and we're going to grow as leaders and grow the culture across our campus. I was just like, oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Chunking is key. Like all of my agendas for my leadership team meeting had the agenda item name, the amount of time we were going to spend talking about it, and an indication of what the goal was, whether it was information or not to share, or a decision to be made, for example. And we had a timekeeper. Somebody had the role of timekeeper. And when we were getting close to the end of the 5 minutes or whatever we said, she or he would say, we said we were going to spend 5 minutes on this. Now, are we going to spend a couple minutes more and go over, or can we wrap this up? And that kept us on task. It allowed us to get a lot of work done in a 90-minute period. And we met 2 times a month for 60 to 90 minutes with a really strong agenda. And one more thing, because I always like to say one more thing, is I didn't do a lot of talking as the principal at those meetings. People had homework to do. They had to go get input from somebody. They had to build the vision for their department in my first year. So they had work to do. And we often had 2 or 3 or 4 people who would report out on the work that they had done since the last meeting. And that was the meeting. And then it was going to be somebody else's turn to report out. So like I was taking in more information than I was giving out, at least once we got rolling. I feel like that's a nice signal for people. If you're at a meeting and the leader's not doing a lot of the talking, people are working. They're getting work done.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the whole purpose of the meeting is. Unfortunately, it is in the eyes of the principal or leadership team is to make decisions and to disseminate information. And I think there is a lack of action or a lack of teaching of like, if you're a leader, you should be doing these things. And to your point, TJ, and I'm glad you said that because that wasn't a part of like your agenda, but like you said, you gave homework to folks. Like, yes, we're meeting here, but the work isn't done in this 90 minutes. Like it continues and you have a role and you're getting a stipend for a reason. So once we're done with making the decisions and once we are going to disseminate, but there's other actions that need to be maintained or continued on for this work to be done well and done correctly. So I think that's when we think about like leadership meetings, unfortunately, I think most folks don't even consider building leadership. Like this meeting is to help lift everybody up. I don't think that's really a concept that most leaders think about within their leadership meetings.
And it's a mistake. I mean, it's a mistake not to spend, like I said, always a third of the time, at least a third of the time on leadership development strategies to build the team's strength. And another not great signal is if it's not clear what work we're doing in between the meetings, it was a bad meeting.
Everyone walks out confused, like what just happened?
Right.
Or you just got talked to or something changed operationally. This is one more thing I wanted to say.
Go ahead.
Which is the operations and management. Like a lot of those meetings end up being about operations and management, moving the kids from here to there, who's in the cafeteria. I will want that meeting to be about learning, teaching and learning. Let's look at data. How's the initiative going? How's the new curriculum unfolding?
So all of this to say from the comment that was left, if you are in the leadership meeting and you're experiencing the opposite of what we're talking about, right, then it seems to me that if you have the relationship with the leader to start to influence how that time's spent, with the caveat that you go and say, hey, I'm actually wanting to develop as a leader. You're my leader. I mean, you wouldn't say it that way, but how could we adjust this and have conversation about what it means to be a leader on campus, to be an instructional leader in my department? Like I want to grow in that way. Maybe we could read a book, right? Because I think also at leadership meetings, there should be discussion and argument, you know? Because that means that the leader values the opinion of the teacher leaders who are sitting around the table. But that's right. Is that what I'm hearing? You got to influence the end of those meetings in some ways.
It might even just be asking what's the most important thing that you want to occur in these meetings, or just like trying to get an understanding of what the goal is. And like I said, I don't think a lot of principals, I truly think it's just a check off of my list. I need to get this done. I got to meet once a month or twice a month, and I'm going to quickly put something together. And this is just how it's always been. I think that's just a lot of how schools run. And so I know that was my experience. Leadership development wasn't a part of it. If I wanted leadership development myself, I walk my butt into the office and I'd say, I need to grow in this area, and this area. And then I would propose some options or do you suggest anything else? And so to Mitch's point, I did have a good relationship with my admin, so I could have those conversations. I could push back, and I didn't feel like that relationship was going to be broken if I said something. So like, I know some folks don't have that opportunity, but I would start to question things. I don't think it's bad, as long as you're being respectful in that, you know, because I think you can kind of dig a little bit as far as that conversation goes to get them to where you want to get them to, as far as, is leadership opportunity even a part of what you want on this campus? You know, I'm being more direct than how I'd say it in a meeting, but that's essentially what you're trying to get to. TJ, you look very much in thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking too, like I was thinking maybe to take one quick step backwards and just philosophically describe, though, that I think that that leadership team is what is the driving force for school improvement, not school
Totally.
management.
Mhm.
So to Mitch's point about argument, we should be pushing the envelope at that meeting. Like we're changing something fundamental, and it could be a deeply held belief in our school or our community. Like we're going to do a new reading program, or we're going to completely change the schedule, or we're going to blow up the grading practices that we have and retrain our teachers on more feedback and less assessment, or we're going to institute something with AI, or we're like, if we're just at that meeting to talk about the management of the school and the status quo and the humdrum, that's not the way I wouldn't have that meeting. I just, that's not in what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about teacher leaders and running a teacher leadership team meeting. We should have something that we might not all agree on, like grading practices, for example, that might even be a little bit controversial for our school community, or something we've never done before. That's how you have cycles of continuous improvement. They should be growing in their leadership because they need to lead something.
Mhm.
All right, this might be a shameless plug, but I'm listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm an assistant principal, or I'm a principal, or I may even district leadership on the, tuning into this and thinking, oh, I am running meetings where my teacher leaders are just sitting passively gathering information. And there is, to Kid, your point, like sometimes we gotta talk about this. We'll call it direct instruction for meetings. But if they wanted to shift the culture and practices in those meetings, what's the book they should read with their teacher leaders? Carve out a third of the meeting to talk about the content and spend a semester or a whole year, whatever. They can choose the timeline. Maybe it's between now and the end of the school year. Plenty of time to read one book with your teacher leaders. What's the one book they should read? Is it one that TJ or Josh has written, or is it something else? My hunch is, and that's what I mean by shameless plug, and I don't mean it as a plug, but what should I do if I'm that principal and I want to shift?
I think a lot of books can do that. And to TJ's point, and he brought up grading. We did a book study, Fair is Not Always Equal, and I think I've talked about it before, Rick Wormley. And I talk about challenging. We did it as a whole staff. But I remember vividly like two teachers standing up screaming at each other because it was challenging a traditional thought and a practice that they had been doing for 20 years.
Right.
And for them, it was very personal. And so it was like, how dare you challenge something that I think is right? But to TJ's point, it was something that gave us space to consider something different. It gave us space to have those tough conversations. And that started with the leadership team. A lot of leaders didn't agree with it. And then it got to be widespread where we did the book study. But I think whatever initiative, whatever challenge you have, whatever data you bring, it could be student discipline, right? Shoot, you could do the language of behavior, right? It could be social emotional learning. You could do becoming the bison. Whatever the book is based on what you're bringing to the table to kind of have that difficult conversation. Because the worst thing leadership can do is just be stagnant and just move forward, right? And have these meetings that we're talking about where it's just, I got this from the district, I got this from the state, now I'm going to disseminate to you and you disseminate it to your teachers. Like, okay, great. But that's not really challenging. So I think whatever your initiative is probably where your book study needs to come from.
Well, I was thinking outside of the initiative initially, Josh, like how if we're going to talk about teacher leaders as instructional leaders in their department or whatever cohort of the staff they're leading, then I would say subsequent book studies are topical or aligned to initiatives. But the leader who's like, I want to grow and nurture
Oh, you're
these
talking about
teacher
leadership
leaders.
development.
Yeah, something like just
I'm with
shift the culture of kind of the campus in some ways. If I was that person thinking like, shit, my meetings are boring. I just pass along information. I want to change. And I want that change to be something we talk about and we debate and what book should I read with my team, with my teacher leaders?
I mean, a plug from us, but it is something that gets used a lot at the table is Candid and Compassionate Feedback, our first book. It's still, I think Passionate Leadership is probably the one that comes up second for leadership team meetings, but Candid and Compassionate Feedback is broken into 3 parts. The first part is instructional leadership, to your point, how to lead instruction. The second part is shared meeting spaces and how they should run. And the third part is teacher leadership. And so you really do get the strategies that can be used at the table, but the teachers take away from those strategies and how they can use them in their departments. But I think the cultural shift is more about facing reality, confronting our circumstances, and we need to learn to be candid, which is a skill, not an attribute. And so to do that, you have to practice and you have to learn. And that's why we wrote that book. And I could say more about it, but the other book that I like to use is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I just think it's an oldie but a goodie, and it's easy to break up the 21 laws and give everybody a few laws to present and discuss and to lead the learning. We're talking about teachers here, right? So they know how to build a short lesson plan for 20 minutes of the meeting and get everybody involved with good questions that come from the chapters. And each one of the 21, I just think, is a distinct way to think about ourselves as leaders. For example, one law is called the law of the lid. The capacity of the organization cannot exceed the capacity of its leader. So the capacity of your department cannot exceed the capacity of its leader. So if you have a weak English department chair, you're going to have a weak English department. If you have no English department chair, we have no leadership, no capacity at which we can grow. And so, books are structured that way, I think are easy to use, but Candid and Compassionate Feedback was written for that use. Don't always love to plug directly like that, but it's something we hear over and over again for leadership team meetings.
And Jigsaw, baby. High effect size.
Huge. Do a jigsaw at every single meeting and do it well. That's modeling the instructional practices you want your teachers to use with the students.
Okay. Looking at you.
Should we close it down?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully everyone that's dealing with some leadership issues right now, if you need any support, if you need anything from us, of course, please let us know. We're continuously doing this mailbag in between each of the series. So if you're brand new to the podcast, this is something that we do after a 4-part series. So I don't know what the next topic will be, but the next episode will be a new topic. We'll do 4 episodes, and then in between we'll do another mailbag. So if you have a question on anything that we have talked about today or in a previous series, please reach out to us. In the show notes, all of our websites are there. You can contact us through there on social media. Or if you're part of Kim's wonderful community, you can reach out to her directly, like the 2 wonderful teachers did for this week's mailbag. And typically we go anywhere between 2 to 5 questions. It just happened that we were extremely passionate about these 2 questions, so we only got that far. But with that, I hope everyone has a fantastic week, as we will be diving into a brand new series next time. Kim, before we shut this down, do you have any updates either on the work that you're doing or with VIBE Edu?
Well, VIBE EDU is officially trademarked. we are now a registered. Look at you with your T-shirt. We are now officially a registered trademark for conferences, for podcasts, and it is so exciting. It's official, boys. It's official.
Well done. Awesome news. Well, I can't think of anything else better than to leave that for our ending. And again, we'll see you next week for a brand new series.